So, you want to get into hiking, but you're not sure where to begin? Then this video is for you. Hey guys, I'm Audrey, known as Glow Stick on Trail. I'm an avid lifelong hiker. I thru hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2018, and now I live in Colorado where I literally hike and backpack all the time and share my adventures with you guys. So I've gotten a few questions lately, mostly on Instagram, but a couple on YouTube as well, from people who are saying they would like to get into hiking, but they've never done it. They really don't know where to begin, and they don't know where a person does, start to get into it, or how they become outdoorsy or whatever. So I decided that I would make a very basic video for you guys on how to get into hiking, how to go on your first hike. And just to note, guys, that I already have a video about taking your first backpacking trip. So if you already have done some day hikes and you're interested in getting into backpacking, but you're not sure where to begin, go check out that video. But for now, let's just talk about day hiking, taking your first day hike, and what you need to know in order to start. By the way, I'm dog and house sitting right now, and this is a chicken coop behind me. So you might see a couple of chickens wandering by, who knows? So I just thought I would point it out in case you do, just so you're not like, what is going on over there? It's a chicken coop, that's all. Okay, so first and foremost, I just want to say, don't be intimidated by the idea of getting into hiking. While I will go over safety precautions and what you should bring with you and how to choose a trail, first and foremost, I just want to say that hiking is just walking. Yes, there are some additional things that you want to think about and be prepared for, like different weather, different terrain, but when it all comes down to it, hiking is just walking outside. And there are hiking trails for every different level of hiker, from ultra beginner, paved trails, handicap accessible at national parks, that sort of thing, to the most rugged, difficult, rocky, steep trails you can think of, just going straight up mountains. So there is a whole wide range out there, and don't feel like you have to do these hard, the most difficult hike to begin with. You can just choose something short, something easy, something simple, and build up from there. So along those lines, let's start by talking about how you choose a hiking trail. So in this era of social media and apps and just crazy easy access to information, there are so many places that you could look in order to find a hike. But I think that probably the easiest thing is to download a hiking app. A couple of the popular ones are All Trails and Pro Trails, which I use both of those. And those are great because you can filter by, your area, things that are near your town or your city, how many miles you want to hike, if you want to do an out and back, if you want to do a loop, how much elevation gain you want there to be, how difficult the hike is, moderate, easy, difficult, etc. All different kinds of filters that you can put in there. So I would recommend using one of those apps. Most of the time I use All Trails, and that'll be how I choose trails in areas that I'm not familiar, or how I'll find new trails. You can also just plain do a Google search. Like if I'm going to a new place, I'll simply Google best hikes in Boulder, Colorado, best hikes near Durango, Colorado, wherever you're going, best hikes in XX National Park. And you'll get a lot of information that way as well. There are a ton of hiking websites out there, like Hiking Project. There are a ton of hiking blogs out there with lots of information. And a lot of people will even, in their blog posts or even in their YouTube videos, like I do a lot of YouTube videos on specific trails. If you want to know more about that trail before you go out there, search for someone's blog, see what they had to say about it. Search for someone's YouTube video. Once you're in All Trails, you're searching hikes near this city, or you're searching on the internet, whatever. So something you want to think about is your mileage. If you're brand new to hiking, you really want to take into account your fitness level. Like, are you a very active person? Could you maybe handle a little bit longer of a day? Or are you just getting started in your fitness journey and you want to start off with something easy to see how it goes first? Obviously, if you're brand new to hiking, I would probably recommend starting with something pretty easy and maybe doing a loop, something that doesn't have a lot of off turns onto other trails. So, I think a good starting point would be a 3 to 4 mile hike. And then in addition to the mileage, you also want to think about the elevation gain and loss on that trail. So something like All Trails or Pro Trails, those will tell you what the elevation gain is on this hike. And the elevation gain per mile is really, I think, how they figure out those ratings of the different trails: easy, moderate, hard, difficult, whatever. So what I would find appropriate for a beginner hiker, if you're doing a 3 to 4 mile hiking trail, I would not want the elevation gain to be over 1,000 feet for that trail, just because I feel like then it's going to be steeper, it's going to be harder, and you don't want to intimidate yourself on your very first hike. Pick something like a little bit flatter, and then you can obviously like build up, do longer hikes with more elevation gain. I typically in a day won't do more than 3,500 or 4,000 feet of elevation gain on a long hike. I mean, I certainly will on some days if I feel like pushing myself, or I'm on a backpacking trip and that's just, you know, the elevation that I have to deal with. But I'm not really much of I'm not a huge peak bagger, and I don't just like to do like super difficult hikes all the time. So that would really be my normal day limit, is probably 4,000 feet of elevation gain, which is a significant amount. But yeah, for someone new wanting to try it for the first time, I would definitely say under 1,000. By the way, guys, I think that a neighbor is doing some leaf blowing. So if you hear like a buzzing sound in the background, that's what that is, and I apologize for that. Another great thing about using the apps to find hiking trails is also that they tend to have comment sections where people will leave comments about what their experience was on a certain trail. So I think that's really useful in different seasons to find out what the trail is looking like in that season. For example, if it's in winter, you want to know how deep the snow is. Is there a lot of ice? Are you going to post hole, which means you're falling through the snow and getting it up your legs and maybe getting stuck a little bit. Nothing serious, don't worry. But in the spring, you want to know how muddy the trail is. Is there anything you need to know about the trail ahead of time? Have people been seeing wildlife out there? You can read all of that stuff in the comments, and especially, you know, in places like Colorado where we could have snow until June or July, and then we could start getting snow again. I mean, really, we could have snow all year long, but snow sticking on the ground typically through June or early July, and then we could start getting it again in September. So you want to know what the trail looks like before you go out there. And this doesn't obviously apply to all places. If you live in a warmer climate, maybe you don't have to deal with snow or ice, but maybe you do have to deal with mud. But you want to know those things ahead of time. In more remote places as well, you want to check ahead of time to see, do you have to drive on any, you know, back dirt roads or roads that are maybe only meant for 4-wheel drive vehicles. And again, this isn't something that you're going to come across in every place. Like, I used to live in Washington, D.C., so I would go hiking in Maryland and Virginia, and this was never something that I had to deal with. But now that I live in Colorado, a lot of the mountain roads to hiking trailheads could be off on dirt roads or on 4-wheel drive roads, and personally, my car is just like a little hatchback. It's not making it on the 4-wheel drive road. So that's something that I need to pay attention to when I'm choosing a new trail. And it's actually something that holds me back a little bit in terms of which trails I do choose to go to. And you can also use these comments to find things that you want to see on the trail. Like, are you hoping to see some wildlife? Maybe pay attention to where people saw wildlife, what time of day. Do you want to see wildflowers? Like, pay attention to when those wildflowers are popping based on people's comments. All that sort of stuff. It's really useful. So once you've chosen the trail, you want to make sure that you have a trail map and you know ahead of time where that trail goes. Are there any off trails that you might stumble on if you're not paying attention? Are there any turns that you need to pay attention to? Is it very straightforward? Is it just an out and back where you go, you know, out to a certain thing, maybe a lake or an overlook or something, and then you turn around? You just want to make sure that you do have a trail map with you, whether that's digitally or in paper, just to make sure, like, if you take a wrong turn or something, you can easily take a look at that map and be like, oh, this is what we did. Let's get back on track. One other thing to note about choosing a trail is that some trails allow dogs and some trails do not. So if you are hoping to bring your canine friend with you, just make sure that you are choosing a trail where dogs are allowed. And if they are allowed, just know whether they need to be on a leash or you're allowed to let them roam free. Okay, so what do you wear hiking? You want to bring a lot of layers because when you're outside, the weather could turn at any moment. You want to be prepared for any type of weather. So hot, cold, rain, sun, etc. So you want to wear layers, and you want to wear moisture wicking clothes, which are going to be quick drying and are going to pull moisture away from your body so that you're not just like completely soaked if you get stuck in a little bit of rain. You also want to bring, I always bring an extra warm layer, as well as I like to bring rain pants. I like to bring a rain coat, and always a hat as well. If it's wintertime, maybe a beanie, some gloves. If it's summertime and I'm gonna be sweating a lot, I'll bring a buff to, kind of grab some of the sweat on my forehead so it's not just dripping down my face. And of course, you wanna have proper footwear. I would really recommend hiking boots, because they tend to be pretty sturdy and they protect their ankles. Some people definitely prefer trail runners, which are, a little bit less supportive, but they are lighter so that, maybe you're not feeling like you're dragging your feet quite as much. But I really prefer boots just because, I have back problems, and I feel like the boots help with kind of shock absorption, and they protect my ankles and feet a little bit better. But I would say if you're just starting off hiking, it's another one of those things where if you're just starting off hiking, I don't think it's really necessary to buy footwear just for hiking. I think it's totally fine to just start off in tennis shoes, just as long as you're wearing sturdy footwear that are protecting your feet. And once you decide you like hiking, then you can upgrade and get some hiking boots or some trail runners or whatever makes you feel comfortable. But I think it's totally fine to just start in sneakers or tennis shoes and then upgrade from there. However, I would recommend getting some socks that are specifically made for athletics. They don't have to be hiking socks right away, especially if you're wearing tennis shoes or sneakers, but they should be socks that are moisture wicking. I also recommend socks that are a little more cushioned and not super thin. Just, again, blister protection. My favorite brand of hiking socks are Darn Tough, and I will link those below. Okay, now that you have chosen a trail, what you want to do next is get your bag ready in order to take with you. So I just have this North Face day pack that I've had for about 10 years. My brother Andy got it for me as a Christmas gift one year. Fantastic Christmas gift. So this is just like a little hiking day pack. You could really bring any type of bag that you want to, but I recommend like the backpack style, just because it's easy. Just put it on your back, you don't have to worry about it. But if you just have an old backpack laying around at home, maybe that you used to use in school, or just for traveling or something like that, definitely start with that. And then if you get more into hiking, you can get one that's specifically made for hiking, that has, like the side pockets for your water bottle, and just like they tend to have a lot more pockets and pouches and places to put things. And then they have the straps that go around sometimes your stomach, but usually your chest. So there are lots of brands of day packs out there, but I would recommend just starting off with just something that you already own, not worrying about buying any new gear ahead of time. And then you can upgrade if you decide, oh, hiking is for me, I'm gonna do this all the time, and I'd like a bag that's specifically for hiking. So that bears the question, what do you put in your bag? REI has a great article about the 10 essentials of hiking, which is what you should have in your backpack, the 10 essentials. So I will link that article below, but I'll also go over right now what those 10 essentials are. First up on the 10 essentials list is your navigation. So this can include just a classic compass, as well as a map. As I mentioned, you should always have a map of the trail that you're going to, whether that's digitally or a paper one. And I also recently upgraded. This is a fancy GPS device. It's a Garmin InReach Mini. And this has given me a lot of peace of mind when I'm going out in the backcountry alone. I do a lot of hiking alone. It's really part of my keeping my sanity and keeping my mental health in check, is just spending time alone in nature. But because I am going out quite often alone, I take this device with me because in Colorado, a lot of times we don't have cell phone reception on trails. This allows me to, first of all, it connects to my phone and it'll give me a map of the wilderness area that I'm in when this is on and connected through GPS. And second of all, it has this SOS button on it. And that allows me to get in touch with search and rescue, even if I don't have cell phone reception. So this just makes me feel a little bit better about being in the backcountry alone, just in case something ever happened and there were no other people around, or I got myself into, some sort of unsafe situation. I do have a connection to the outside world. So I think that this is really helpful I was on a backpacking trip over the summer and we couldn't find one of the links to the trail that we were doing. Like, we were searching for quite a while, could not find it, and finally turned this on, connected it to the map on my phone, and we were able to guide ourselves to that other trail using this. It was pretty awesome. This thing is super useful. It's expensive though. This cost me like $350. Actually, it cost my friend $350 because my friend Clay was a sweet baby angel and bought this for me when he had to cancel on me for a backpacking trip. But it's seriously just so useful. And if you decide to get really into hiking, you're gonna do it all the time, I would definitely recommend getting this sort of device. But again, you do not have to get this for your first time out hiking. And also there are other brands that are cheaper. This is like a pretty, this is a more expensive one. There are definitely cheaper options, especially if you just want it for the SOS button and that sort of thing. So don't feel like you have to get this right away. A simple map and compass will be just fine to start out with. Next up is a headlamp or flashlight. I definitely recommend a headlamp over a flashlight. They're so convenient, just in case, you take longer on trail than you expect to, you get caught in the dark, something happens. This is just gonna be really a good, this is gonna be a good safety item to have, okay? And the beauty of the headlamp is you can just put it on your head. You can keep hiking. You can, if you're out camping, you can use it to just set up your tent in the dark, whatever, make dinner in the dark, not have to hold a flashlight in your hands. These are just awesome and totally useful. And best practice is to also bring some extra batteries for this. This one is a black diamond one. I had the same model when I was hiking the Appalachian Trail. I totally love it, so I just ended up buying the second one again when my other one broke. So anyway, bring along a light source. Next up is sun protection, especially if you are in a very sunny area. But as I mentioned, you really need to pay attention to weather and be prepared for all different kinds. And if you're out in the sun all day long, you don't want to end up sunburnt, especially if you're in an area where there's a lot of exposure, not a lot of trees. Maybe you're above tree line if you're someplace like Colorado, etc. But anyway, this could include a hat. It could include sun protectant clothing, like they make like sun specific shirts, for example, that have UV protection in them. Like they'll make hoodies, they'll make button ups. And this also obviously includes the classic sunscreen, which I've just run out of sunscreen. So I actually have to go get more for myself to put in my hiking bag. But you always want to make sure you have sun protection with you. Next up is a first aid kit. I could really stand to actually beef mine up a little bit, but you want to have things in your first aid kit like bug spray, because you will go some places out hiking and you will be swarmed by mosquitoes or other bugs, and they will drive you crazy and you will be so happy that you brought this along. You want to have also something to, in case you get blisters, to treat your blisters. I always bring along hand sanitizer. I also have exercise-induced asthma, so I bring along an inhaler. Things like Band-Aids, bandages, extra contacts, maybe some tampons if you're a woman. I always just throw a little extra hair tie in there as well. Some SPF, Blistex, again, sun protectant. I'm gonna put some on right now. Maybe some Advil, Tylenol, things to wrap an ankle in case you sprain an ankle, maybe some bandages and tape, things like that. Just because you never know what's gonna happen out there, and better to be safe than sorry and be prepared. And this doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can put it together yourself. My mom's a nurse, so every time I go home, I'll like steal some little medical supplies from her and put them in my first aid kit, which again, I need to beef mine up right now. It's a little thin, but I'll get to it. Next up is a fire starting device. This is just for emergency situations. You can bring matches, you can bring a lighter, you can bring the classic flint and steel. It's up to you. I usually bring a lighter. Next up is a shelter. Obviously, if you're out backpacking, you would bring yourself a tent or a hammock. But if you're just going on a day hike, I always just bring an emergency bivvy. So if something happens and I need to make shelter in some way, I can get into this to help me stay warm and dry. I would highly recommend these. They're really cheap, they're really small and light, and it just gives you peace of mind in the backcountry. Next up is a knife. You don't need something as big as this one. This is a hunting knife that my dad got me. I asked him to get me a knife to take along the Appalachian Trail, and this is what he got me. So it's maybe probably overkill for a lot of you. You could just use, like a little Swiss Army knife or something like that. But again, it's just for use in emergency situations. It's good to have it with you. Next is extra food, more than you think you need. Obviously, you want to bring food along to eat during the day. Maybe a sandwich, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, maybe some trail mix or granola bars or protein bars, dried fruit, apples, all of that stuff is good hiking food. It keeps really well and travels really well. But you also want to have food beyond what you think you're going to eat that day. Again, just in case the hike takes longer than you think it's going to, in case you get lost, in case you get injured and have to wait for a search and rescue, something like that. You want to make sure that you are prepared and have enough food to last you longer than you think you're going to be out there. And next up is water, and same thing. You want to bring, your reusable water bottles for the day. Fill up, and keep in mind, hiking is exercise, so you're probably gonna get thirsty, especially when you're exposed to the elements, the wind, the sun. You're gonna get hot, you're gonna get sweaty, odds are. And even on a cold day, you need to really remember to drink, because dehydration can cause a plethora of issues for you. It can drain your energy. It can make you delirious if you actually get pretty dehydrated. It can cause some health issues for you during the day. So make sure you are hydrating. And that means bringing as much water as you think you're gonna need for the day, and then some beyond. And then you can also always keep emergency things in your backpack if you would like iodine tablets, so that you can purify water in the outdoors, because you never want to just drink water straight from a creek or a spring or something. You want to make sure you're purifying it in some way, so that could be by using a water filter. I like to use the Sawyer Squeeze. I don't have it in this bag because it's in my backpacking backpack, but the Sawyer Squeeze is pretty small. If you wanted to get one just for your day pack, you could totally do that, and it wouldn't be, it would be a pretty smart thing to do. Just note that the Sawyer Squeeze specifically, which I'll link that below by the way in case you're unfamiliar, but just know that the Sawyer Squeeze, if you're out hiking during winter, like the Sawyer Squeeze can freeze, so you'd want to keep it in your pocket. And if you're storing your hiking bag out in a garage or something that could also be exposed to below freezing temperatures, you'd want to take your filter out of there. But anyway, you don't have to bring a water filter with you, but you want to have some sort of way to purify water, again, in case something happens out in the backcountry, in case you get lost, you're out there longer than you think you are, and just always make sure you have extra water with you beyond what you think you're going to need. And last but not least, we already talked about this, but it is a 10 essential. You want to have extra layers with you. You want to have extra clothes to be prepared for any kind of weather that could come along, because you could start out hiking on a beautiful day, blue sky, not a cloud in the sky, and then especially if you're up in the mountains, weather can change very quickly and very unpredictably. You could get snow in Colorado, for example, in the middle of summer, and I've actually been caught in a couple of snowstorms in the middle of summer before. So you just want to be prepared for anything that comes your way. So I always like to bring a puffy jacket with me. I use the Patagonia Micro Puff. I also like to bring rain layers, rain pants, raincoat. I like to bring gloves. I like to bring a hoodie. Even in the summer, I'll bring those things. So you just want to make sure you're prepared with extra clothes. It's always helpful to have extra socks in case your feet get wet. You want to do everything you can to prevent blisters, etc. So just make sure you're bringing extra layers of clothes. So those are the 10 essentials. But beyond that, there are a couple of other things that I always make sure to bring on my hikes. First of all, I use trekking poles. Again, this is totally not necessary. You can decide you like to use trekking poles. You can decide you don't like to use trekking poles. You can use the classic, just you find a stick that's big enough out in the wilderness that you can just use as like a trekking pole. But I find that these help me push myself uphill. They help me keep my balance and save my knees going downhill. And people often ask me what it is I'm using these for, and that's the explanation I give. I started using them on my thru hike of the Appalachian Trail, and I never used them before that, and I haven't gone back. Even for the easiest hike, whatever, I always bring these along. And I only have one in my hand right now because the other one is actually holding up my phone. I have an octopus tripod wrapped around it, so it also serves as kind of a tripod for when I'm making videos. But these have multi-uses. I love them. And a lot of really lightweight tents for backpacking, you actually need trekking poles in order to set those up. So if you're gonna get into backpacking at all, it's also good to have these around. But seriously, they have saved me from tripping, falling over roots, falling over rocks so many times. I'm obsessed with them. And in the winter, these never leave my hiking backpack except when I'm using them. These are micro spikes, and they could be useful to you if you live in a cold climate, if you deal with ice and snow in the winter and you want to be hiking in the winter. You strap these onto the bottom of your shoes. These are actually really worn out. I have a new pair that I need to switch out for these, but these have spikes on the bottoms, and so they help you walk over ice and have more traction, so it's less likely that you're gonna fall. These are, honestly, they're such a game changer. I would recommend them for anyone who's hiking in any season where there could be ice on the ground, because these are so amazingly helpful. These are Catula brand, and like I said, in Colorado, we tend to have snow until, you know, possibly even early July, and we'll start getting it again in September, especially up in the high country. So I have these in my bag for the majority of the year. I will take them out in the middle of summer because they're not super light, and I don't want to carry them if I'm not ever going to use them, but they're just such a game changer. But again, you don't have to get these for your very first hike by any means, but I just wanted to let you know that if you do get into winter hiking, these could be really helpful for you. Okay, so you've planned your route, you've got your clothes ready, you've got your hiking bag ready. So the last thing I want to talk about is taking safety precautions. Especially if you're like me and you're gonna go hiking alone, you wanna always tell someone where you're going, when you're leaving, when you're gonna come back, so that if you don't come back when you're supposed to, they know that you're out there in the wilderness and you could possibly need help, you could possibly be lost, you could possibly be injured. You just wanna make sure that you have someone looking out for you. And also with safety, again, you always want to bring a map and compass or a GPS. I prefer to bring both. And I also bring for my cell phone and my GPS device. I want to make sure that I can always keep those things charged. So I'll also bring an Anchor external battery, which is actually in the house right now, so I don't have it right here at my bag to show you guys. But again, it's one of those things where there are several brands, but Anchor is kind of the big brand. But it's just an external battery that you'll charge ahead of time, and then you can stick the cords in for your phone, for your GPS device, maybe for your wireless headphones, and you can charge those things while you're out in the backcountry away from electricity. So I would highly recommend getting one of those as well. And obviously, just make sure ahead of time all of your electronics are charged. If you have a GPS device, make sure it's charged ahead of a hike. If you're taking your cell phone, make sure it's charged ahead of your hike. So anyway, those are my tips on how to plan your first hiking trip. I hope that wasn't too intimidating, you guys. I know I went over a lot of stuff, but at its root, hiking is just walking, just out in nature. So don't be too intimidated by it. You just have to put one foot in front of the other. Just be prepared, know where you're going ahead of time, know the name of the trail, know, how to get back to your car and about how long it's gonna take. Always tell someone where you're going ahead of time when you're coming back. Make sure you have the 10 essentials in your backpack. Bring some tasty snacks along. And most of all, guys, just have fun. Just have fun. Nature is so great for your mental health. And obviously, physical activity is also great for your physical and mental health. It's good for you. It's fun. Bring along a friend if you have one that's interested. Bring along a group of friends. Bring along your dad. It can be a really nice bonding experience to get out with friends in nature. So anyway, I don't want you guys to be intimidated. I want you to get out there and have a great time and get over that hump of being afraid of not being outdoorsy. Just have a good time. If you have any specific questions, let me know in the comments. I always love hearing from you guys. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And hey, if you're feeling generous and you want to see some more hiking and backpacking content, check me out on Instagram. I'm over there at Audie Payne. I'll put that in the show notes. And I'll have a new video out soon, guys. I can't wait to talk to you again. Talk to y'all later.